any questions, I'm sure our panelists will be able to address in regards to what he has spoken. They're all better versed with that. I want to hand over back to you, Anthea, to take us through the next panel speakers, and then we can get into our conversation properly.
Thank you, Sandra. So I hope you all learned something about investigation over sentimentalism as journalists, but because I know I did. The next panel speaker I'd like to introduce would be Mr. Joseph Enyimu. Give him a round of applause. He is a development economist with over a decade of experience in monitoring, analysis, and communication of Uganda's economic development policy and results. His experience spans development planning and finance within the context of national, regional, and international development frameworks, including Uganda's Uganda National Development Plan. So he's the person to tell you exactly what we are doing here. You prepare all your hot questions for him. He also has consulted for the national and international agencies and authored a range of research reports, policy briefs, and official publications. He holds a Master of Science in Economics and Social Studies degree, majoring in development policy and practice. His areas of research interest include poverty reduction, private sector development, sustainable development, and regional economic integration. Please join your hands to invite Mr. Joseph Enyimu.
Many thanks for joining us. I believe, Anthea, we should now invite all our panel speakers so that we send all the questions where they're seated there at once.
Our next panel speaker is Miss Betty Mujungu, who is a Ugandan media female broadcaster. She works with 101 Voice of Toro FM Fort Portal in content development and within content development and as a creatives manager and a show host. She has 9 years track record of radio broadcasting, working directly with rural communities, getting their voices heard through interviews, rural debates, dialogues about public service delivery, and all other issues affecting the communities. Welcome. Please put your hands together again. And our next panelist is, Miss Jane Angom. She formerly worked with Speak FM, and she is a media viability consultant and a scholar for media leadership. She is the coordinator for Cross Border Network, and she works closely with community radio stations and has been in community media for over a decade. Please put your hands together for Ms. Angom. All right, over to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Anthea, for doing us the honors of introducing to us our panel speakers. Another round of applause to our speakers. So today we'll be diving into this very important conversation, facilitating effective public service delivery through journalism. We are all here because we want to tell the story, but we want to tell the story right. So I want to quickly invite Ms. Angom. And from our previous conversation, I know that you've worked tirelessly with people on the grassroots. So you have information that we need in terms of public service reporting. What is your experience?
Thank you very much, Twinoburio. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm excited to be speaking to such an awesome audience of largely young people, young journalists. Exciting because you hold the key to the conversations that we are having this afternoon. For over 10 years, yes, I've worked with community media. I have worked in Gulu precisely with Speak FM. And I have seen journalism being practiced outside the urban setting. And what I have seen is how intelligent people, journalists passionate about what they do, can bring transformation by, one, contextualizing what they are reporting about. What do I mean? We will soon delve into what the NDP3 is, what the commitments of the country are. But, for example, I know that one of the core things in that document is to facilitate improvement in this country through agriculture. So if 68% of the people in the nation or more are in the agricultural sector, how does a journalist reporting or covering this particular issue in the rural address the aspect or address the issue? I have seen that journalists who have taken this particular issue in the National Development Plan and have planned it to relate to what the people are doing will make sense and are understood. This and a lot more, which I will speak about later. But I think that for our audience here, it's vital that we appreciate where we are coming from. Anthea asked the question, who has heard about the NDP? And who has heard about NDP1? Who has heard about NDP2? Who has heard about NDP3? And the show of hands in the room was actually mute. So I think a good place to start, even before rattling on what I have seen or what I have not seen. What are we talking about? For me, I would like very much for us to get a frame of what it is, so that the audience that we have fully understand what we are talking about, where we are coming from, and then we can further the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And in fact, I want us to make this very conversational, not too serious, very conversational, and I want us to understand everything. So for those, Anthea, when you asked that, there are those that actually said they knew about NDP, NDP 1, 2, and then 3. Would like to get one or two of you that know about the NDP plans to simply give us an overview of how they understand that. Then we can invite the person that is better versed to speak to us on that to give us more detail. Anyone willing to tell us about the NDP?
Anything you know, we'll bring the mic to you. There's no shame in the game. Anything.
We do have a hand at the very front.
Thank you. Olivia Nakalembe. I'm a journalist working with Next Media in particular NBS Television. NDP, National Development Plan. I think, well, I did see the hands that rose to answer the question on whether they have any idea about the National Development Plan. And usually when we set out to get to understand some of the stories that we are supposed to tell, we know for sure we are driven by certain documents, and the NDP happens to be a very important document that centers around the entire country, but also goes beyond borders. Say when donors or development partners come to help government to implement certain, say, projects in regard to it. So the NDP, that is an acronym to mean the National Development Plan, and just like the word goes, it is a document that of course has gone through what I would say informally amendment, like say the plain 1, 2, 3, because right now we are operating at, I think, NDP 3. So in other words, it's been built over time. And it's a document aiding development in different facets, even when the okay, let me say moderator was introducing it, she did highlight something to do with some of the facets that it aims to address in terms of national development. So the NDP is a document that aids or explains centers of development that the government will undertake in different facets, say tourism, health, policy, strategy. So in a nutshell, that is what the NDP is. So then you further categorically underpin, say, the different timing, say, what does one say up to what time frame, because even the different facets of the NDP do address up to a certain point in time. Then maybe one could have, say, maybe stopped in 20-something, then 2 takes on over there, then 3 takes on over there. So in a nutshell, thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other person that would like to address that? Anyone who knows about the NDP? Do we only have one person here?
We have another one.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina from UMCAD School of Journalism and Mass Communication. The NDP that I've heard of is NDP 3, that literally deals with aspirations like of Uganda, like, okay, Uganda's vision, like how they would see like Uganda in 2040. Like it's more of an, like aspirations, right?
Right. Okay. Now, do allow me, as we move back to our panel speakers. Mr. Joseph, are you happy with what you're seeing in the room? Is it working? Have you done enough?
Okay, good afternoon. I am excited to be here with you this afternoon for many reasons, but chief among them is the fact that, Uganda is rated the youngest country in the world. The median Ugandan is a girl, and she's aged 17 years. If you lined up Ugandans from point A up to Z, the middle person would be a girl, and they would be aged 17 years. So this gathering is very representative of the flavor of Uganda. I can have a taste of Uganda by engaging with you. The National Development Plan, what are we talking about? Uganda as a nation, but also if you think of Uganda in the frame of an individual. As young people, you have dreams, you have aspirations. There's a future you're looking forward to. And as a nation, we have the same. And that future, we capture it in a document called a national vision. So we have a national vision. I think that Tina made mention of it when she said Vision 2040. We set out ourselves a few years ago, I think it was in 2010, to say, where would Uganda want to be 30 years from today? And so we came up with that document called Vision 2040. That's our aspiration as a country. And that vision, essentially, we want to move from the largely subsistence society that we are. The word subsistence means that you produce by yourself most of the things you consume. We want to move away from that kind of society where people produce for their own consumption to a society that is modern and prosperous. That means that people are able to engage through the market. You can provide yourself, render your service or your product, get paid for it, and through that income, you are also able to go and satisfy your other needs and other desires. So that's our vision as a country. But it's a 30-year vision. A lot of things change along the way. And so you need documents that can allow you manage your journey to that 30-year period. And that's where we get the document called the National Development Plan. To achieve Vision 2030, we broke down that vision into 6 5-year timeframes to say we are going to plan our journey there in periods of 5 years. So our first National Development Plan ran from 2010 to 2015. The second one ran from 2016 to 2020. And now we are on the third one, which is running from 2021 to 2025. And the reason is, you know, the future is so unpredictable. You cannot determine the variables that will be at play 10 years from today. And so that is, in a nutshell, what the National Development Plan is. Every 5 years, we come together as a country and we ask ourselves some questions. You know, what did we set out to do? How did we perform? What challenges did we encounter? How can we do better? And that's a national conversation. We reflect collectively, and then we reset ourselves for another 5 years. So we do that every 5 years. I think for now, moderator, I'll pause there so that you can guide on how we navigate further than that. Thank you.
I do want to stay with you, and I see some of you are getting confused. I love confusing people. I'm right here. But I know we have NDP 1 and NDP 2, and then now we're on NDP 3. Now that we're speaking about journalism, you say you always sit down together and see the mistakes, the gaps that need to be filled. Have you involved media in that process?
Yes, we do involve media, but you raise a good question in the sense of how well do we do that? So the question is not whether or not we involve the media. It's maybe how well or how better can we structure that involvement. And media in our space of work is very, very, very strategic. In fact, I once sat for an interview, and the interviewer asked me a question that, what is the fourth arm of government? Many of you are familiar with the 3 arms of government. But there is a 4th arm, and that is media. Now, it is important because media has the means to reach places and reach people that we as government officials may not be able to. You have a way of packaging content and making it consumable by different audiences. And that is why we see you as a very critical partner. Because development, you know, we are talking about a national development plan. Think about it. What is development? You know, you can have personal development. I think you talk about that when you refer to yourself. But it's really about the process of actualizing your potential. You know, you come into this earth as a baby. In you is potential. As you grow up, you develop, you're nurtured with the view that you can bring out and put across that potential. And the national development process is the same. Uganda has potential. That potential must be identified, it must be nurtured, it must be promoted, so that we can make our contribution to the human, journey globally and locally as well. So we do involve journalists and the media at large for a number of reasons. One is to inform. Remember that Uganda is a republic. When I was in primary school, we learned that that means we are a government of the people. A government by the people and for the people. So whatever authority government holds, it is entrusted to it by the people, and it should be able to serve the people. It's the people that put you there, and they put you there to serve them. And so the media provides a bridge for those who are elected, who are entrusted with that mandate, to be able to stay engaged with those who put them there. And so whatever you do, whether you're making policies, whether you're making laws, you need somebody who can help you check. If it was business, it's like you're checking with your customers. Are we giving you good customer service? Do you like our product? Do you like our service? And that is really the way we look at the media. So we work with you, one, to inform the people about these policies, the laws, and performance. Every year we take stock of how well we are doing what it is we are supposed to do. And the other one is, as part of bringing out our potential as a society, many of you are students here. You appreciate the role of education. You have to be educated. And the media provides the vehicle through which to do that. And we rely on the media to, bring awareness. There are different levels of education. You can have academic education where you go through a formal school process. But even more important is exposure. When I interact with young people, one of the things we have to work on very well as a country is the level of confidence in our young people. Getting us to believe that we are great people, we have great solutions to offer, regardless of your age, and that takes a lot of education. You have to understand who you are and what you can put across. And then sometimes we just have things to communicate, and we rely on the media also to do that. And that's why we call you for media briefings. When government has anything important to say, we will invite the media fraternity, and we hold, a news brief, or, we brief the people who carry the news. So that's where I would leave that for now.
Thank you so much, Joseph Inyemu, Commissioner, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Jen, should we now carry on with this background? Would you say we are set to carry on with the conversation now?
I think we are in a better place than we were when we were starting. And I am glad that my co-panelist here has highlighted the importance of involving the media in the process. But he has also considered that probably the way it's being done is not as good as it should be. And probably that is why it's quite obvious in the room that not so many of us knew about NDP 1 or knew about NDP 2, and now we are at NDP 3, but we still have 4, 5, and then 6, because all of this is a process towards this aspiration of this nation, Uganda, in Vision 2040. So, as journalists in the making, what then does this leave us with? Where does it leave us as students of journalists? I think that it's very clear that, one, we need to be more proactive in trying to get to understand the things around us. The professor who just spoke to us and went away said something like this, that there are many ways to find information. And probably we have been focusing on interviews only. But even access to this document called the NDP3, number 2, finding time to read what is in this NDP3, number 3, understanding what is in the text that we've read, and then 4, interacting with it is very critical. When we do not even know that there is a document that should be guiding the process of development in this country, it becomes very easy for us to listen to a commissioner or to listen to a minister say certain things, and we are very comfortable with that, because all that we know is what they are providing. And we are unable to relate it to context, but we are also unable to focus it ahead. I do not know if I'm being clear. So the onus is again back on us as journalists, so that we are able to find these documents. And we are really, really lucky that we live in times where, much as there are limitations on one end, we can have access to information and documents from another side. This NDP3, for example, is very much available online, and we could all download it and have a copy and begin to consume it. And then when we are now armed with the text, the knowledge of what is in this NDP3, we can execute our journalistic roles in a better way. Thank you for now.
Thank you so much. So I'll now move on to Betty Mujungu. And I know you also have so many years in public service reporting, but what are the key issues that you're seeing in the way journalists report on issues that matter?
Thank you, Sandra. Indeed, I've been in the media now close to 9 years, and I am basically a journalist from a rural place, Fort Portal, and my experiences are vary from that perspective. But it's really a work in progress for journalists in reporting public service delivery. I will tell you that in the 9 years, I haven't seen as much appetite for public service delivery news in the communities we serve, like today. When I had just joined the media, it was hard to actually find people or citizens that want to maybe come to a talk show and discuss public service delivery. But because we have kept on engaging the people, the citizens, I mean, as journalists, before being journalists, we live in these communities, and we are meant to set the agenda. And it's very difficult to think that you can set an agenda if you don't understand the needs of your community. But with the continuous engagement as journalists, calling on the community, mobilizing the community, that's one of our roles as journalists, to mobilize the community towards development. With these continuous engagements, it's work in progress today. Today, if we only, I work for a radio, so my, most of my conversations will be from experience. If you put an announcement on radio and tell a certain community that today, as a radio, we are visiting your community and our topic is probably the health services, people will come in very big numbers because they want their voices to be heard. Like I said, the appetite of people to be heard on public service delivery is really, really high. And as journalists that live in these communities, for me, I normally tell the young journalists that are in my charge of mentorship that before you think about just writing the story, what impact, or what's your objective of telling this story? There is telling a story, and there is also digging deep, like understanding the story and tell it in a more weighted perspective. But also, as journalists, public service delivery really begins at the grassroots. It begins at the village level. At the village level, there are village councils. A village council is constituted by the people in the community. So if you want to have a community that has access to public service delivery, better service public delivery, you need to go to these places. If you attend a village council meeting, you will learn of how much needs or how many needs people want or what services people want. There are councils at the parish level. Yes, yes, we love to cover what what Parliament has passed, the laws, the policies, but there are these councils at the parish level. There are these councils at the district level. There are these councils at the municipality level. These councils sit every financial year. They have a budget that they run every financial year. They have councils, they have budget conferences that are open to journalists, not to only come and attend or cover a story, but to participate. So if we want to increase or have better public service delivery, because we are part of the communities, we are not from the Mars. I mean, we are part of these communities. When they are suffering from diseases like bilharzia, in my community, there's a time when there was no water in one of the area, and people were suffering from bilharzia. And we were like, I mean, how does this go to, maybe, how do people feel when they say that in Fort Portal, people are suffering from bilharzia? We are part of these communities as journalists. And that calls for us as journalists to feel part of the communities and push for better service delivery. Attend the councils. Ask how much, know about the budgets. Because it is in those local government councils that public service delivery really, really is. Because, yes, we know the National Development Plan is here, but there's also a development plan at every local government. There's a 5-year development plan at every local government. And this is actually derived from the National Development Plan because they work along. So the development plan that is 5-year from your local government, or even Kampala is a district, it has a 5-year development plan. But do we really care to know what is in that development plan? What does the budget say in line with the development plan? I think as journalists, these are questions that we need to put into perspective for the people. My co-panelists just said, he said something to do with the National Development Plan being 5-year, every after 5 years or 4 years. So it is key for us to be able to break down these key things in the National Development Plan to be understood by your audience. Lately, we have, some of us have moved from calling them audiences. Usually we say we have listeners, we have viewers, we have audiences. These are participants, and these are meant to be engaged and be part of every decision that's taken. And like they say, information is power. If we as journalists don't have this information, there is no one you're going to inform because, you have no reason to speak if you don't have the information.
Well, I want to stay with you and quickly ask that you help us understand in 1 minute how CSOs can work with the media to promote the accountability in the implementation of the national development plans now that we are speaking directly to it.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. I will speak from my own experience. We work closely with civil society organizations. They need us as much as we need us. Most civil society organizations have budgets for the media, but usually as journalists, from my own experience and the people that we work with, we go to, every time they call us, we go to these meetings, write them a story, but they have budgets that can facilitate your work to dig deeper into public service delivery. I have seen civil society organizations personally at my media house. We've been funded to do public service delivery engagements, dialogues for quite a time by a civil society organization, because we are the media, we have the capacity to mobilize. The people or the communities trust us. I was sharing with someone this morning that growing up, for me, I will say the radio never lied. Whatever came through the radio was gospel truth. And even when someone told you that this and this is happening, you'd say, no, I haven't heard it on the radio yet. It was until when you hear the radio, I mean, of course, the radio put it out, that you'll know it's gospel truth. So we have the power as the media, and we can engage civil society organizations. They have the monies, they have the funds, they can fund your dialogues, they can fund your investigations, just in case there's something you want to investigate. We have anti-corruption. They normally fund investigations for journalists that are doing public service delivery reporting. So basically the role of civil society organization is very huge in public service delivery, because they have the funds, you have the knowledge, you have the microphone, you have the pen, you need to use them, and they can use you as well. There are those that use us only to tell stories about their accountabilities, how they are closing this is what they have done. And as journalists, sometimes we are not even bothered to know what they are saying they have done. Have they really done it, or this is just for accountability purposes? So they really play a key role in public service delivery.
Let us now bounce this question to you, Jen. How can CSOs work with the media to account, to ensure and promote accountability in the implementation of the National Development Plan?
Thank you very much. Now, civil society organizations do have an agenda. Each one and every one of them is not out there without an agenda, or because they do not want to do something. They certainly have a purpose, and in most cases, those purposes align with what our NDP 3 stipulates. So now if I'm connecting the dots between or among the CSOs, the journalists, and the NDP 3. Let me start with an example. When we had COVID, in the times of uncertainty, when the country was locked down, there was a need for information on what next should people do. And there was a hunger in our communities from the population to understand how to stay safe. And it was a matter of life and death. So because of that, everybody kind of came together to find ways of working together. So in Gulu, we worked with CSOs as a community radio station to package information that we then sent out. We extended this approach to education. We worked with actors in line with education to send this information out. And it was very well done, and this kind of partnership or collaboration has continued. So asking the question, how can CSOs work together with journalists in amplifying what is in the NDP 3 mandates? I think that we need to understand. For example, There are key development strategies within the NDP3. And I think there are about 20 areas. But if I am just to pick on one, improve access and quality of social services. That is a commitment in NDP3, that the government is looking out to improving access and quality of social services. So what are these social services that we as journalists also partake of, but also that civil society organizations are out to enhance? And how can we work together? So one, it's not enough to just hear and leave it at face value. We must ask the questions. You are an NGO, you are working in the space of water provision. You're telling us you have spent 50 million on sinking boreholes. Are these boreholes in place? And if they are in place, who is managing them? 3, how have these boreholes improved the lives of the people that are benefiting from it? Actually, did these people need the boreholes or they needed something else? These are the kind of questions that we journalists now need to ask so that we are working together to help the CSOs be more accountable, but also we are propelling the mandate, or we are boosting the understanding and the receipt of what is in the NDP3. The second thing is now the context. Our contexts are different. What happens in Fort Portal may not be exactly what is happening in Gulu. But sometimes as journalists, we forget that, and it is easier to copy and paste or to cut and put. But can we go a little deeper so that we make meaning for our audience? And what we are talking about is relative to their experience. Thirdly, understandability. You see, there are terminologies that might be used in a specific domain. Say medicine. There are jargons all over. Maybe in law, there are jargons all over. You as a journalist, how do you help your audience appreciate what is being said without changing the meaning, but breaking it down and making it understandable for them? So I think these are some of the areas that we need to be looking at, even as we work with CSOs. CSOs will have a lot of acronyms, for example. They will have a lot of jargons, but how do you break this down so that your communication is not only just colorful and well painted, but it is making meaning? Again, you are doing this with an end in mind. Your end is that your audience, your listener, your person you're speaking to is understanding and appreciating this. So there is a way to work together with CSOs intentionally, so that you're not only parroting or repeating or painting them in good light. That is for the PRs. Let the public relation officers do that. Ours is to go a little deeper than that and question a few things, but asking it in line with what is in the NDP, so that if you're doing this, is it in line with what our National Development Plan also suggests or says? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are we still together? Are we getting better versed with what we are talking about here today? Anthea, I just want to ensure our audience is still with us. Wherever you are we getting some questions down? Do we have some questions so far? If you have any questions, please do note them down, and we'll be passing the microphone to you at any given point to get that question. We're almost coming to the end of this conversation, but I want to turn to you again, Mr. Joseph. And my question to you is, would like to hear from you Uganda's NDP3 commitments, and how, for example, the people in this room, the journalists, how they can better report about them to encourage accountability and, of course, action around these issues. In fact, as you answer that question, would also like to hear, how are you designing these plans so that media can take them on and then distribute this information, but most importantly, to critique it, whether for good or also for bad.
All right, thank you. Now that we've discussed and understood what this plan is, I think it's an opportune point to unpack the current plan. When we put together a national development plan, we have a goal for those 5 years. And then that plan also has high-level objectives. An objective essentially is what you aim to do, okay? And against each objective, we have a target. How shall we measure success? What will success look like? So in the current plan, we have a goal, which is the improvement, of the quality of life and incomes of Ugandan households. That goal is to be achieved through 5 objectives. One is to enhance the value addition in primary growth sectors. Primary growth sectors are areas where Uganda can produce goods and services, both for our consumption as citizens, but also for export. Those are things we can sell to other countries and get revenue. The second objective we have there is to strengthen our private sector to be able to generate jobs. And in that private sector, we are talking about businesses, whether they are corporates or SMEs, micro enterprises, whether they're in the informal or formal sector. Another objective we have, which would be the third objective, is to increase the stock and the quality of infrastructure that we have as a country. By infrastructure, we mean things like roads, railways, ICT. I see all of you with your smartphones here. That calls for bandwidth to transmit all this information we are texting. The other one is to improve the quality of our population and the productivity of that population. It is not enough for us to settle for the fact that we are, 43 million Ugandans. What is the contribution of each of those Ugandans to the prosperity of our nation? And so we have an objective around that, and that includes you. How do you measure productivity in journalism? How do you know that as a journalist you have made impact? How do you know that your story, is a changing opinion, is informing debate and changing the course of events in the country? And so those are indicators we will have to measure your productivity. And then objective number 5 is the role of the state. How do we strengthen the state to perform what it exists to do? Like we said, we are a republic. These people we put in office, how do we make sure that they are able to serve us better? That is the 5th objective. And against each of those objectives, we have targets. But for purposes of today's discussion, I'll just limit myself to one. You are familiar, of course, with our aspiration to transition into a middle-income country. We set ourselves a target on that, and the idea is that every Ugandan should be able to generate an income to be able to live a decent life, a life that is dignified, to be able to have a roof over their head, to have the recommended number of meals, to dress themselves, to educate themselves, or to access health care when they need it. And collectively, we want to make sure that, that happens to, Ugandans in an inclusive manner, not a few, but that we can carry everybody along. So that's one of the commitments our government has made to us in the NDP3. And I think that you, as a fraternity, the journalists who are here, you really have a big task. And I like what's written on that wall there. Journalism can make the world a better place. You can indeed make Uganda a better place. And not just in terms of the national picture. How do you make your village, your parish, a better place? You have the role to awaken communities to the resources around them. What do we have? There is no community that is poor in that sense, that it is resourceless. The idea is, how do you bring the consciousness of that society to what are the resources we have? How can we better organize ourselves? And we do that by challenging those who are in leadership, but also challenging the population to think differently. And I think that as a journalist, I am a firm believer in following your passion. I don't think journalism is best done as a job. A job is what you get paid to do. So if you are into journalism for a pay, I don't think you will ascend very high as an effective journalist. But if you are in journalism because you have a passion, this is what you do, this is what you sleep, this is what you dream, then you are able to, push the boundaries, do the research, collaborate, network. That takes a lot of work to put out a good story out there, a story that is full of the necessary evidence, that is conceptually well-grounded, that commands the attention of those who need to do something about that. Because at the end of the day, journalism is really about creating narratives. Remember that the world is governed by narratives, okay? So how do we shape the narrative in a village? How do you shape the narrative in a district? How do you shape the national conversation? All of that is on your shoulders. And you want to make sure that you shape it in a way that creates a positive and lasting contribution to society. And so the NDP3 that we are talking about is made up of 20 programs. As a country, we are now moving away from a planning approach called sector-wide planning. We are moving to what we call program-based planning. And what that simply means is that we want to plan around common results. We no longer want to settle for the fact that you are busy. You can be very busy sometimes doing very little. And so the idea is, how do we work around a common result? Whether you are this ministry, whether you are the media, whether you are a university, at the end of the day, we have a common benchmark that will tell us whether we have played a good game as a team. And so we've organized all our efforts into these 20 programs. Our budgets are organized as such, the budgets we take to Parliament, and it is the role of you, the journalists, to unpack what is in those, to provide, journalism provides what we call a challenge function. Okay? It is your duty to challenge what is being asserted, because whether it is the government, whether it's the private sector, and by the way, let's not pitch the media against government. For example, I don't see very active media engagement with our corporate private sector. How do you do your journalism to challenge the corporate private sector in Uganda? Maybe to make a better contribution to society, or to confirm that what they are saying really holds water. And you need these different audiences to have a holistic story. So that is it about the NDP3. Now, the NDP3 is at national level, okay? But in Uganda, we operate a decentralized system, okay? And so you need to also be able to understand, if you are a local radio station, how do you take this national phenomena, you know, and localize it to your district? If you are a community station, how do you take the district, you know, picture and locate it within your village? What are the right kind of questions for your LC1 chairman? Okay? What are the right kind of questions for a headmaster? You know, what is in the NDP 3 for somebody operating a public, maybe health center 2 or health center 3? When you meet a nurse, are you able to challenge that nurse regarding her role or his role in delivering the NDP 3? It is you to do that customization and to facilitate these conversations at whatever level. You need to be able to zoom in and zoom out. If you have the platform to interact with the head of state, how do you position the national story for that interaction to make an impact? And at the same time, if you zoom down from the head of state to a primary school teacher, how do you still maintain a story that holds your audience, you know, in a captivating manner? And I think that is the challenge you have as a fraternity in making the world a better place, or making Uganda a better place. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Joseph, for your submissions. And he is the right person really to tell us more about NDP 3, and he is the right person again to question. He is, I told him earlier that he's the person representing the government as we speak. So if there is anything that you feel you need answers to, please do raise your question and we'll have that addressed. But Anthea, I know there's something you'd like to say in regards to the submissions of the commission in regards to NDP 3. What are those? Over to you.
No, I was listening to the commissioner and something he said really stood out for me. You know, as journalists, because most of the work we do is qualitative, if I might, in terms of nature. But I think we can borrow something from the world of policy, and I think I've observed that they design a system of key performance indicators to see if their work has been impactful. And I think as journalists, we should also borrow that, you know. It's not just you put out a story. How do you measure the quantitative effect of the story you told? I think that's something we can borrow from the policy world. That's really, it's offside, but I think it's also very relevant.
Absolutely. And again, from our panel speakers, I realize that what you're trying to point out more is that journalists need to go beyond the headline. So for example, if the civil society is saying, this is what we are doing in Karamoja, you need to come and say, is this what people in this area need? Is this something that they actually advocate for? Does it apply to their need? And again, are you providing it in the same amount that you're reporting you've provided? Journalists have the role, have the ability, by the way, to tell the story beyond just the headline. Now, we want to pass this conversation to you. If you have any questions, we do have a question up here. Anthea, we have, oh yes, we have ladies here.
Seeing as El Shaddai, you're part of our community, let's first give a chance to somebody who's not very familiar, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you for being so fair. I'm by names of Paul Weboya, and I would like to start on a wrong foot with the commissioner. I would like to disagree with you that on your point of telling us that the media is the fourth arm. Actually, out here we think the media is a gun to you people in one way or the other, because that's how you see the camera. It's like a kind of a gun. So my question to you is, the NDP 3, we had a question at first, but you realize that the entire room had one person or two that actually responded to whether they know NDP 3 that we are talking about. These are journalists that are seated right here, professional journalists. So I'm wondering, who are the people you include when you're formulating these policies? You have not included the media. If you had included people in this room, we would have very many answers to that very particular question. But we had none. The only person who replied was probably Land, and she's somewhere in a good media house. So I think we need to also look at inclusion when you're formulating these policies, because we are the people who are affected at the end of the day. We sit back, like Madame Jane said, we are the people at the grassroots. Regardless of being tagged along with the profession of being journalists, we are also local people. We sit down with at the grassroots. We need to be included. We are all learned in this room, I believe. Now, my grandmother in Bududa, if you ask something like that, in regards with the NDP3s, what would you expect such a person to be, knowing? So I think inclusion is lacking. Thank you.
So the question of inclusion, would you like to respond to it, ASAP?
Yes, that's a very valid question. So there are a lot of angles to look at this. One is within the media itself. How well organized is the media for its action as a collective body? When we have national processes, because logistically you cannot be able to talk to every individual. So we work through representative systems. We look out, typically we cluster the players in a number of areas. So we'll talk about the private sector, we'll talk about civil society, we'll talk about the academia, and then we'll talk about the media. Now, that of course is an assumption that the media itself is democratically organized, in the sense that you have a way of expressing yourself as a national body or an umbrella organization, so to speak. When you say these are the leading media houses, what does media leadership mean? Is it just that you have the widest coverage or reach, or you also have the responsibility to make sure that the platforms you command as a leading media voice require that you work with the teams associated with you to represent, disseminate that information. When I look at the international media, there's a body called, I think it's Reuters. Reuters, yes. That different media houses, I think, subscribe to. So the collective effort of the journalists to be able to have like common repositories of information, that whether you're a remote journalist somewhere, you can be able to know what's happening at a national level by being a member of that, So that is one thing I think you need to reflect internally, how well organized you are. But I agree that we can also do a lot on our side to improve that engagement. Some of it may require more investment because every time you organize an engagement with the media, you have to hire venue, you have to dedicate resources to generate the content and generate it in a way that it is consumable by the different media houses. And then, of course, there is the challenge. Government has what it calls an official language. In Uganda, we use English. And the vast majority of the people we are communicating with, English is not their language of fluency. And so the idea then is, do we have the competencies to be able to, take these official communications in this official language and accurately, transform it into the multiple local languages we have, and at what speed can you do that? Do you have people who are fluent enough? If I am here with you, if there is a journalist here who's not operating an English media house or something, I would not be able to give you an interview for various reasons. The level of proficiency in the different language, is very low. So how do we overcome that? Maybe that's a conversation we need to have with you in terms of our, public relations people. We endeavor as a ministry now that when we give out official information, we hold deliberate interviews also in one or two, major local languages so that we can reach the different people. But there is room for improvement, but it is both ways, on your side, on our side as well. Thank you very much.
Well, unfortunately, we've been told we don't have much time, but our panel speakers are still going to be here. You see right there, the gentleman. Can you just give me 1 minute, just 1 minute to allow this beautiful young lady to ask what they want to ask? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shiba Nakakande from UMCAT School of Journalism and Mass Communication. My question goes to Mr. Joseph. You say 20 programs have been set aside by the NDP3. Well, I would love you to shed more light about these 20 programs and just a little snippet about them.
In a minute, maybe.
Well, I have good news for you. Since I was engaging with your fraternity, I took some time to prepare. So I have come here with a one-page summary of the NDP3. I've been able to condense it down into what the goal is, the objectives, the key results, and what the 20 programs are. So I'll ask that the conveners of the event make this available to you, and I think that way we can achieve greater impact.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Do allow me hand over to Anthea to close up this moderation. It's been such an honor co-moderating this with you. For the other questions, let us keep them and ask them to our panel speakers after this session. Over to you, Anthea.
Thank you, Sandra. I think if there's anything we should pick about NDPs is it's not a huge chunk that we have to do till 2040. It's broken into 5 years. Am I right? Yes, that's the simplest one. It's 20 points. So you can pick any of the 20 as a journalist that interests you, and you can choose to report on that until the smallest level. You granulate it until, as the lady Miss Betty said, you take it until the councillor level, right? And another thing I can say I safely picked is not just to do PR work for the NGOs, but to also investigate from the civil society. I mean, they are organizations still with, they are prone to, misrunning, if I might. So as we investigate the government in public service delivery, we again still investigate the civil society. Thank you so much. Thank you to our great panelists. You're welcome to ask them any additional questions. We know it's a heavy topic, but please find them at lunch. Hopefully they'll stay for our good lunch. Find them at lunch and ask them any additional questions that might inform you better and with whatever angle you hope to specialize in. Thank you for staying for this session.
Yes, a big round of applause, please.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Anthea and Sandra. It's been quite insightful and very interesting as well. Now, of course, to our panelists, thank you so much. Mr. Joseph Enyimu, the Commissioner, MFPED, Dr. Julius Kiza, the Head of Political Science and Public Administration Department, and of course, Dr. Betty Mujungu. Thank you so much. And of course, Madame Jane Angom, the Media Viability Consultant. It's been quite a wonderful one.
Well, it's now time for lunch. There is lunch for everybody. Yes, there is. I can see smiles crawling up on our faces. But you can just use this direction to go to the canteen for our lunch. We have only 30 minutes. But most exciting is that when we get back, we'll be doing more hands-on training. But for now, let's head in for our lunch. DJ, please.
30 minutes, please. 30 minutes for lunch. Let's try to be as fast as possible.